Our way is set before us, and now it's time to take on the 6th Colossi. Before this, I said that this Colossi might be a little frustrating, but now that I remember it, this is actually a fair respite after the Avion fight. It's the one after this one that we need to worry about a little more. Still, I think there's some interesting things going on. Note that we have to cut through a forest to get where we need to go. Again, we're moving through some shadowed areas with no real access to the sky where most of the light is coming from. We only have a few beads of light that come through the cracks between the trees. Otherwise, we're moving through a very tough to navigate space. You can see that Agro is even having a hard time moving around. But we slowly make our way towards our target. And as we emerge from the forest, we really get a lot of light. So there are areas of the land that are not covered by the light, which could be associated with Dorman or not. Dorman is this figure that might be both light and shadow, a figure that has feminine and masculine qualities. But we're really moving into some bright areas right now, and I think the contrast is really, really exciting. Movement into the space here is going to be important too, because we're moving into a sort of man-made ruin. We don't understand what the purpose of this ruin is, but the more important thing is that we're going to be descending into it. Until now, we've jumped into lakes and sometimes even climbed up to reach our Colossi, rather. In this case, we don't need to worry about that so much. We're going downwards, which has its own sort of connotations in terms of physical language. We might try to imbue that with a sort of dastardly feel, but here it feels like we're delving into an area of ancient knowledge, and I have a reason for saying that. The 6th Colossi's name is Barba, and you'll sort of see why in a minute. The design of this Colossus is very interesting to see. That design is primarily going to be the reason I associate these ruins with knowledge, even though perhaps that's a very simple association when it comes to imagery. You'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. I do enjoy that the game always gives us an establishing shot, or tends to give us an establishing shot, of the space that we're going to be in. So now I need to descend. Here we're going to show off just a curiosity of the game itself. You'll see here, no matter how far I fall, as long as I grab, I'll always be safe. Now the wall slides back, and it will reveal Barba, who has a giant beard, hence the name. The beard is also why I associate this area with sort of ancient wisdom. And we also have to wonder if Barba is guarding this space, or has been sealed up here on purpose. The fact that the wall opens makes me want to think that they're here to guard something. So, if they're guarding ancient wisdom, that would kind of be a nice little story. There's a Latin phrase that you might not be familiar with, or you might be. Barba non factic philosophum. It means a beard does not constitute a philosopher. In this case, Barba's actually not that dangerous of a Colossi, even though they can be frustrating if we can't get them to go the way that we want them to. So we might say something along the lines of Barba non factic Colossi. A beard does not make a Colossus. In general, though, this fight really has a lot going for it. The environments will be destroyed. We have to do some quick thinking of our own to get Barba to follow us. And really, we have a little bit of play with the Colossus, whereas before, with Avion, it was a lot of strict combat. Here you can see Barba destroying the environment. Not many Colossus actually do this. Some do, to minor degrees, but here we have walls falling apart, and it's a minor chase sequence that sort of has an apprehensive tone, even if Barba will prove to be an easy Colossi to conquer, so long as we're able to gather its attention. Much like Phaedra, we need to use the environment to hide. In this case, we need to hide behind these pillars so that Barba will eventually come close to us. But we can see some of the frustration that mounts when the Colossus doesn't quite do what you're asking it to. I want Barba to turn and come at me, so I'm just going to pelt it with arrows. This is the sort of frustration we're talking about in this game. Every now and then, things just don't quite go the way that you think they would. That unpredictability is nice, but also can detract from the overall experience. But Barba now knows where we are. It's a very simple fight, and as they get close to us, they're going to have to investigate ways to attack us. So they lower down, and they show their beard, which we can climb on right away. This actually is a sort of comedy to me, a strange form of interacting with the Colossus. Climbing onto its beard is probably one of the most interesting ways that we climb onto any of the enemies we encounter, and it's probably one of the most amusing. So even though we've had a little bit of frustration trying to get the boss to do what we do, we have a couple of interesting things going on. We have Barba trapped in this space that it can't really escape from. We have to figure out what the context of that space is, and we also have a little bit of comedy in a game that's generally very somber. Once again, it's a simple process. We look for the weak points, and we attack. The core mechanics of this game are very rarely going to change when we encounter Colossi. There are some that are going to sort of test our use of aggro and our understanding of weak points, but it's always going to have a sigil, and we're always going to have to find ways to attack it. It's only until later that we really get into some of the more puzzling and involved Colossi. Still, as we're getting near the middle part of the game, Barba's a nice break from some of the things we've encountered before. In terms of design, there's a nice ebb and flow that happens shifting from Avion to Barba. And as we can see, not as difficult a fight as I thought. After this, we're going to end up fighting a Colossus in a very hard area, a very difficult area. Here, it's not that bad, and the boss fight, it's actually kind of fun. And lest we forget, Barba non-factic Colossi. A beard? Yeah, it doesn't really make a Colossus. Barba is going to be one of the last of the truly humanoid Colossi that we encounter, at least for a while. And we can see that as more people encroach upon Wander's space, there's a real sense of danger, a real sense of corruption that's occurring, that wasn't quite there when we only destroyed a few idols. Now we get the sense that something is truly happening, even though it's some sort of metaphysical or magical thing we can't quite apprehend. The fact that the game sort of repeats the same mechanical cycles is something that you might find boring if you're playing it through just a straight playthrough, but I think the idea of repeatedly doing an action in order to pursue a goal is interesting on some levels. It brings to mind how simple the motivation of Wander is. Not in the sense that it's a simple, petty motivation, trying to save someone, but that it's a very simple one that we understand on a very primal level. So the act of repetition of just going about the space and defeating monsters over and over sort of speaks to that single-minded ambition. In the next video, we'll encounter a very tricky Colossus. But of course, for now, that was number 6, Barba. I'll see you in the next section. Let's keep on keeping on.